Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the time is approaching 7 o'clock. So welcome all to this special meeting of the Economy and Place Scrutiny. Just go over a few house rules before I commence with the agenda. There are no fire alarms drills planned for this evening, but if the fire alarm does sound, can we all exit the building? Fire exits are to be found at the side of the room leading into Queen's Gardens, where we all will assemble by the statue of Queen Victoria. We won't return until we are invited to do so. Can mobile phones either be switched off or put on silent, please? Thank you very much. So I'll move to the agenda. Item 1 is apologies. I've received apologies from Councillor Richard Gordon, who is substituted by Councillor Phil Rees, Councillor Jill Berry, who is substituted by Councillor Mark Holland, and Councillor Jill Burnett-Faulkner, who is substituted by Councillor John Tack. Any further apologies? See no hands, so I take that as no. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest on the items of business for this evening? Councillor Jones.
Yes, Chair. Just to note that the plan that makes reference to Keele University and I'm employed by Harper and Keele Vet School, which is part of Keele University.
Declaration is noted. Item 3 is the minutes of the previous meeting. These minutes can be found on pages 3 to 6 of your agenda. Can they be received as a correct report?
Move it, Chair.
So we'll move to item 4 then, which is the substantial item of business for this evening, which is the Newcastle Underlying Local Plan. The report 2040. The report can be found on pages 7 to 268 of your agenda. I will now invite Alan to and Andy Fair, sorry, if he would present the contents of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we have a very substantial document in front of us, and in fact, as I'm sure Mr. Clark, who I'll hand over to in a moment, to point out that this is in fact the tip of an iceberg, because there's an even more substantial amount of supporting documentation sitting here. This is an interesting moment for our council. We haven't been here since 2002. We haven't had an adopted local plan since 2003. So well, it really is a timely moment to make this arrangements. In front of you is the draft local plan. You can see a very large document. There's also, of course, an introductory part of it, and that takes you through the contents of this plan. So if you look at like section 2 of the report, you can see that there's an introduction to the various chapters of the local plan. I realise that this evening probably it's sections 2.6 to 2.12, and then later on we've got the allocation section 2.23 to 2.26, which will be of primary concern. But once again, I'd like to stress to members that there's an awful lot more in this plan, all sorts of policies, not just site allocation. So when we think about this, we should try to have a holistic approach and look at all of this rather than just focus on very narrow parts. But again, before I hand over, I'd like to thank members who came to the Teams presentation on Monday about the plan. Hopefully that's been a useful exercise for this evening and indeed for the full council meeting that's coming. But now what I'm going to do is hand over to Mr. Clark here, who is again going to give a brief presentation to take us through the structuring and rationale of the plan.
Before you come in, can I just make everybody aware, so I forgot to say at the beginning, that we are being recorded live, broadcasting live on YouTube this evening. So anybody who wishes to speak, could they please use their microphone so people who are listening to the recording can hear. Thank you. Back to you now, Alan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Beard. Good evening, members. Can I share Councillor Beard's notes about the Teams meeting on Monday? And thank you for those who attended that session. We've got a short presentation this evening. Some of these slides will look familiar from the ones that we went through on Monday, but I'll just work through them as we go now. So, first of all, to stress what is the local plan to start off with. So the local plan sets long-term vision and development strategy for a borough. It sets contacts for making planning decisions. It allocates land for development, how homes, jobs, and other uses. It includes policies for determining planning applications as well. It identifies where and how many new homes should be built, locations where visitors may need more land, areas of regeneration, protection, areas of green belt, etc. etc. There are various tiers of planning guidance. So at national level, we have a national planning policy framework and various other statements produced by the government. And then the element that we're looking at this evening is the local policy, and that's the development plan, or the local plan for individual authorities. And local authorities are required to produce a local plan for their areas. But then sitting in tandem with the local plan are neighbourhood plans produced by local communities to provide that local dimension on decisions within their local areas. The current development plan for the area is the Newcastle and Stone Joint Core Spatial Strategy, which was adopted in 2009. As Councillor Beard also made reference to, there were same policies that still exist within the Newcastle local plan, which was adopted in 2003. We've got the various minerals and waste plans, which are produced at county level. And then, as mentioned in the previous slide, we've got a number of neighbourhood development plans now listed there. We've also got some emerging ones also. So the local plan, we through the period of 2013 and 2020, we're producing a joint plan with Stoke City Council, and the decision was made to prepare a single local plan for Newcastle. So since 2021, we've had various stages in respect to the local plan. We've had the issues and options consultation. That looked at a very high level about levels of growth and where that should be directed, including some options. And then last year, we consulted on the first draft local plan. That was we consulted on that. And that included a suite of policies and also some draft site applications as well, where we sought comments from local communities and stakeholders. The stage we're on now is the third bullet point downward. That is the final draft of the plan, and we're seeking authority for council at the end of the month to approve to consult on the plan at Regulation 19 stage. And then following that consultation, we're hoping to submit the final draft plan for examination to Secretary of State by the end of this calendar year, which will then trigger an independent examination of the public. And through that process, the plan will be examined just to see whether it's sound and capable of adoption. And then the slide goes on to mention possible outcomes following that examination in terms of an inspector writing a report on the plan. If inspectors suggest that the plan can be sound and capable of adoption, then full council will consider the plan for adoption in due course. And then the last bullet points to make clear that once the local plan's in place, you continue to monitor it and review its performance in terms of how it's going against its objectives, etc. So as on the previous slide, Regulation 19 is a different stage to Regulation 18, so it is different to the consultation that we had last year. It's assumed subject for council approval in this month, and that is the plan that the council considered is sound and capable of adoption. We then go out for consultation, and through that consultation and examination, there are various tests that the plan is subject to, and then the tests of soundness, which are set out in the National Planning Policy Framework by the government. Those tests are a plan that should be positively prepared and seeking to meet objective assessed needs, should be justified, taking account of alternatives based on proportionate evidence, effective, i.e. deliverable over the plan period, and also consistent with national guidance. It's also important to note that plans must also be legally compliant, i.e. there's various legal tests that the plan must adhere to, including strategic environmental assessment, habitat risk assessment, amongst others. And also have or demonstrate effective cooperation on strategic cross-boundary issues. And that is a tool for delivering strategic planning at local level. Local plans are supported by evidence, so there's a whole host of documents which are currently ready to be published and alongside a future consultation on the plan. These include documents that establish provide guidance on the sites which are available in the borough, matters such as viability and retail, issues including flooding and greenbelt. So just to touch briefly on the proposals in the final draft plan. So the plan is seeking to establish an overall development strategy of 8,000 dwellings, that's 400 dwellings per annum over the plan period, and also deliver a minimum of 63 hectares of employment land. The plan includes proposals for strategic employment sites, 2 in the borough, 1 at land at junction 16 for logistics and other uses, and also 1 at KL 15 associated with Keele University of Science Growth Corridor. The establishment of the minimum levels of development has been informed by a local housing need assessment by consultants Taylor's, and also in view of the strategic employment sites, we've also had strategic employment sites assessment for the council as well. So Taylor's revised on the housing need, and we have utilised the 2021 census and up-to-date data on economic projections at the time of writing the study. We are utilising the standard method as a starting point as per national guidance. Consultants in doing their work have provided evidence to demonstrate that the standard method figure doesn't fully align with our economic projections or forecasts for the borough, particularly in the element of supporting an increase in the working age population. And therefore, the plan provides for slightly higher than standard method of 400 dwellings per annum to support the levels of job growth and working age population. Also takes account of the strategic employment sites and also delivers affordable housing in the borough as well. The plan provides for a settlement hierarchy, which focuses on higher tiers, growth in the highest tiers of the borough stats that focused around the Newcastle, the Lyme and Kidsgrove. It also identifies a number of rural centres where a level of development is directed towards support their ongoing vitality and viability. The lowest tier of the hierarchy is the other settlements in rural areas, which isn't a focus of growth in this plan, although there are policies around exception sites and other matters. In line with our hierarchy, we sought to distribute the highest levels of development to our higher order centres, the largest centres in our borough. And that slide identifies the level of growth identified both to Newcastle and Kidsgrove, but also to our rural centres as well. With respect to employment, we've used an opportunity-led approach, and that's supported also by 2 strategic sites, as previously mentioned, at junction 16 and Keele. As Councillor also mentioned, the local plan also includes a suite of policies on a number of important issues, including matters including density, space standards, accessibility standards, community exception sites, greenbelt, retail, infrastructure, which was an important issue raised at regulation 18 stage, and also a number of topics as listed there on that slide, including biodiversity, net gain, and others. In respect of the identification of sites, we've looked at options within existing urban areas first, and we had a brownfield corporate sites for the period in 2022, but also through brownfield land registering, things like the strategic housing employment land availability assessment, which seem to sort to maximise development within development limits. We looked at the allocation of brownfield and then non-greenfield sites first. We've also had discussions with neighbouring authorities to see where they can meet some of the Borough Council's unmet needs, and through that engagement, it's become apparent that at this time they're not able to assist us. And that's led us to review our case in terms of exceptional circumstances for greenbelt release in terms of the sites. In total, we've assessed 168 sites for our site selection process, and that's looked at the merits of sites for a clear methodology, which we published alongside the planning, is similar to that published at the 18th stage. Just wanted to note two changes following the publication of the agenda for the committee. The first one is a clarification on the boundary for site GT8, that's 11 west of Silldale Business Park, following the drafting error. The revised boundary is shown below in the slide. And then also, following the publication, there's been a drafting error in respect of the introduction to policy AV2, and this is intended to be updated as shown on the slide. So the text which is underlined is supposed to be included in the plan. So that makes clear that the site is allocated for uses including 22 hectares, and it also specifies a floor space of employment land to be appointed also. So just working through the sites by area. So for Audley, there have been some changes since Reg 18's position, which has been the inclusion of a strategic site AB2, which is a strategic employment site, and also the removal of AB32, which was a site adjacent to AB33 where my cursor is now. This is an employment site for Charlie Valley, BW1 for around 6 hectares of employment land. CT1 at Red Street, there's been a change in the boundary since Reg 18 and reduction in capacity at the site from 750 units to 530 units. In terms of capacity from the surrounds, we've included reference CH3 as the site as an avenue, which was a commitment granted at appeal for the implementation on the first draft of the plan. CT20 remains as in the first draft plan, that again is an employment site. Changes since Reg 18 in Keele is the inclusion of KL50, as previously mentioned, that's a strategic employment site to support the Keele Science Grade Corridor. For Kids Grove, it is the inclusion of site 11, which is an existing travel and show business site. So the plan proposes to support that site in terms of its intensification for travel and show person uses. There have been no change in Nottingham and no change at Loggerheads also. For Madeley, there's been an allocation to support a potential future expansion of Madeley High School, which has been identified following engagement with the County Council, as potentially being required as a consequence of the development proposals included in our local plan. And the inclusion of the Walden Scale, which was a site granted at appeal following the first draft plan, is now a commitment. For the Newcastle area, there was previously a site NC77 on the border with Stoke-on-Trent city area. That site's been removed from the plan, but NC13 remains. For Silverdale, the former golf course site, or Lyme Park, as it's now called, has been following further additional master planning work that's been undertaken. It's been split into a number of individual parcels across the site, as shown on this plan, but also a plan on the next slide as well. And as I previously mentioned, there's a proposal for Egyptian travel site 8 for the plan also. This is a master plan for the Lyme Park site, which shows the proposed development parcels. That also illustrates that there's a large retained or proposed country park in between those development proposals. It also shows an area protected open space off Sanctuary Road also. For Torque, there is slight changes in respect to BL18, which is a site which is proposed to be reduced in capacity to 150 and includes some proposals for football pitches. And also a site which was previously in plan BL24 has been removed also. And there's been no change in respect of sites TV23 and TV19. For the town and its surrounds, we've been reflecting the regeneration proposal which are coming forward in the town and its surrounding areas. And as a consequence of the Castle Park, Mulsbury Car Park and other initiatives, the plan supports the potential reuse of existing service level car parks for alternative uses at the appropriate time. SB12 is now a commitment, so it's shown as such in the plan. So in terms of next steps, we've got full council meeting on the 24th of July. And comments from tonight's meeting will report to that meeting for consideration. Subject to approval of full council, we're looking to undertake an 8-week public consultation from the 12th of August to the 7th of October. But again, that's dependent on the outcomes of the full council meeting. If agreed at full council and following the consultation, we're looking to submit the plan to the Secretary of State for public examination following this calendar year. Responses received at the Regulation 19 stage are also provided to the Secretary of State as part of the examination process. And then once that's submitted to the Secretary of State, we then await appointment and notification of the inspector, and then that corresponding arrangements for examination. Consultation will be undertaken in line with the council statement of community involvement. So you can see that it's showing various things that we want to do with the press release and publishing of consultation material. And then, subject to the full council decision and the consultation started, we've got a landing page in respect of the plan to stress that comments will be received via the portal, post or email. We will be holding consultation events across the venues across the borough, similar to how we held last time. So there will be drop-in events rather than formal public consultation events. They're just there for officers to provide guidance on how to submit comments to the consultation. To be transparent, the consultation forms at this stage will look slightly different and structured in the way that the planning inspection wishes to receive comments. So as I previously mentioned, at this stage, the comments are focused around the tests of soundness and legal compliance. So what we will ask is that people frame their comments in those terms to say whether they think the plan is sound and legally compliant on the relevant area. We'll then go on to say the reasons that they consider the plan not to be sound. And then there's an opportunity at the bottom of the forms to say what would make the plan sound for modification. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Well, members, do you have any questions or comments? Start with a show of hands, so I'll take you in the order I saw them. So, Councillor Whelan, please.
Could I just ask for your definition of sound? So the plan should be sound and legally compliant. I understand legally compliant bits, but what do you mean by sound?
Thank you, Councillor. So the soundness is a broad term for those 4 tests that I showed earlier. I'll just scroll back to the slide. So it's about being positively prepared, justified, effective, and deliverable. So yeah, I'll just scroll back to the slide. Yeah, so positively prepared, justified, effective, and consistent with national policy. So the soundness is a broad encompassing term for those considerations.
So if a plan ticks all those boxes, it's designated as sound.
Yes.
Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. My concern is with the site allocations, and particularly with policy LW53. Now, this council did delegate authority to the planning committee to have de facto say in all planning matters. Now, I wonder why LW3 is included in this local plan when it was refused by the planning committee on the 27th of April, sorry, 27th of February this year. There is a potential legal issue here because if this is allowed to go ahead, then this council is firstly questioning its own authority and B is questioning the authority of the planning committee who it delegated authority to make these decisions. this has been, as I was there, and I don't know how many members here were on the night when that was refused, without objection. This matter needs to be removed, this one in particular, and go through for full debate at council and nowhere else, because you leave yourself open to legal issues if you allow it to go through. Well, I don't know really what else to say about that matter, but it's a potential legal issue, and that is why. But why is this included when the planning committee refused it under delegated authority?
I will ask the relevant officer or further holder to respond to that.
I'll respond briefly and then perhaps pass over to our officers for the more technical aspects of this. I don't think the issue is anything like as clear cut as the councillor has outlined. And I think there is a difference to be drawn between the criteria for site selection and the specific development plans that were placed before the committee. Those are two separate things. Certainly, the planning section is reviewing this matter, but I certainly don't think that the council is right in saying that this is a clear-cut matter. I'll just pass over to our officers to make sure that I've got that right.
Yes, thank you for your question. In terms of, we've undertaken a comparative assessment of sites across the borough and around loggerheads. Now, in undertaking that exercise, we've come to the view that the LW53 site is an appropriate site to allocate, bearing in mind it's compared against other sites and their performance. The view that loggerheads is a rural centre in the plan. And the plan here is such that it's planned over a 50-year period. We do recognise the challenge there, as Councillor Pierce said, we're having some further discussions around that. And ultimately, as mentioned previously, that the plan will be considered at full council, where a decision will be made around the site. But in broad terms, we've undertaken a site selection methodology of all sites in the borough, which has assessed the need for development across the borough, which has resulted in development being allocated to loggerheads, to Madeley, to Audley, to Newcastle and Kidsgrove. And we've come to a judgment following the implementation of that site selection process and methodology that the LW53 site in local plan terms is still capable of allocation.
Councillor Panter, do you wish to have the floor?
Yes, Chair. I never once said that it's a clear-cut matter, but if you allow this plan to go through, and this policy in particular, then you are surely ignoring the authority you delegated to the planning committee to carry out this in the first place.
Councillor.
Yeah, so the councillor has just said it's clear cut when he said he hasn't. So there's an interesting issue there in itself. I think the other point that needs to be raised is, once again, there is a distinction to be made between the general allocation of sites and particular proposals that were placed before the planning committee. So those two things are not the same. As I've said, the section is looking at this, but there is a distinction to be made there, and I think we need to be aware that that is the case.
Councillor Ashington-Corney.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a couple of questions. The first one is, how has the council assessed what type and volume of housing is needed across the borough? And the second one is, what traffic monitoring has the council undertaken, to determine those busy areas during peak times and traffic times? And if there's any actual, immediate sort of danger with increasing the amount of traffic for the current dwellings that you're proposing?
Whoever wishes to respond to the member.
Again, I'll briefly do that and then hand over to our officers for the more technical matters. The nature of housing is dealt with in the first three policies in the local plan. So if the council looks at the very beginning, I think PSD or something like that, I can't remember exactly. PSD, yeah. So if you look at those, that sets out the underlying philosophy there. And again, I'm sure our officers will talk about that. As regards infrastructure, there's been the running of a substantial number of computer models. Those models have taken into account the volume of traffic from the city and such like. So again, There's a large section in here on infrastructure with supporting documentation, but I'll hand over to our officers now if they want to add a little bit more detail to that.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you for your question. In respect of the type and volume of housing, we've had a piece of work undertaken called the Housing and Economic Needs Assessment. And that report prepared by Turley's looks not only at the overall level of growth within the borough, but it also looks at the type of homes that should come forward, and also it considers matters around accessibility. So there are certain standards that can be applied for your local plans to increase the accessibility of certain buildings in terms of providing disabled access and the like. So it's looks at factors like that. Most council mentions there are distinct policies in the plan in relation to housing standards and housing mix, etc. In terms of transport, we've had a strategic transport session prepared following a request from National Highways, and that's used the North Staffordshire multi-modal model transport work that the City Council uses, and that has assessed the allocations in the plan and has looked to identify if there are any particular challenges in areas where there's particular mitigation required. And as to demonstrate that in respect of the Keel proposal and this proposal TB19 L50, this proposal for those two sites to be linked to provide for a link effectively from the A5 Keel Road down to Whitmore Road through those sites as an example. The plan is also supported by an infrastructure delivery plan, which will set out building infrastructure requirements beyond transport or consider education and other things as well.
If I could just further help the council, I mean, the policies set out are the IN policies in the local plan. They're on page 73 of the plan per se, or if you downloaded it from this evening, I mean, annoyingly, the computer bundles together the front pages with the actual documents. So it's big number 92, little number 73.
Councillor Holland.
Thank you. I was only going to reflect on what we heard from Councillor Hunter earlier. We may have some other contributions to make at a later stage. But I feel strongly as someone who wasn't the planning committee, which rejected an application for a site that is included in this draft local plan. What the portfolio holder has told us tonight is correct. There is a difference between saying at a strategic level that a site is suitable and preferred for development in the context of a suite of policies that create new infrastructure and support growth in our borough, and refusing a planning application that was unsustainable at that same location and that was wrong in several ways. Those two things are not incompatible. We can do both of those things. And I, for example, will tonight be voting, I think, for this draft local plan to have it go to full council, because I think the other thing that is key to remember is that we as a scrutiny committee are not a decision-making body. This rightly is such an important part of what our council does that it will be decided by full council. And I look forward to all members having the opportunity, reflecting not just on the debate that we're having tonight, but on the extensive briefings given earlier in the week and on the documents themselves, to reach a considered judgment about all of this. And it is not, we heard tonight, it is not about site allocations in isolation. It is about having a strategic plan for growth in our borough, because what I would also like to say is that degrowth, which I know has been suggested by certain people who live in our borough, but who would perhaps like to see fewer people live in our borough in future, degrowth is evil. Degrowth is an ideology of death. And I've had the opportunity over a number of weeks recently, thanks to the process of national democracy, speaking to lots of local people, not just in Newcastle, but in other places in Staffordshire too. And people often raise the same things. They want to see our town centres thrive. Well, we can only do that if we have people living in our borough, working in our borough, able to spend money in our town centres, supported by the infrastructure that policies like this draft local plan will deliver for us. People want to see better local transport, for example, and that again is only sustainable in the context of more people living in our borough and needing to commute or to travel across the area. So an awful lot of what we do and what we want to achieve as councillors is germane to this process. I'll finish, if I may, by saying I was elected in 2011. We have never, during the 13 years that I have been on this authority, had an up-to-date local plan. And my word, we have seen the risks that are attached to that. We have seen the indiscriminate allowing of appeals by the planning inspectorates by people who don't visit our borough, don't live here, they have no stake in our communities, like all of us in this room, and yet it is open season on our green spaces. We have heard from the new government that they would like to encourage more development and that they would like to see more housing. And I'm sure, putting the best possible spin on the new Secretary of State to whom this document will go, I am sure that they would much prefer, as a bold reforming government, to be helping us to shape development in our area, rather than having land on their desk applications like, and I couldn't say whether or not the one that Councillor Panter referred to might eventually form part of a planning inspectorate decision or an appeal, but we can be certain that applications like that will in the future, if we do not make progress on this process, if we don't get our local plan adopted, we will still be in the situation 11 years hence, when hopefully we will all still be local councillors, those of us that are elected to this authority. We will still be in that situation of having no control, of having development on our green spaces, in our green belts, that doesn't accord with local need, that isn't in accordance with the local plan, and nobody's been consulted on other than the developers that speculatively put them forward. So I in mind, I've spoken for so long, my light is flashing, Chair. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to say some of those things. If I do have anything further to say, I will come back.
Any of the officers will cover those right to add to. Okay, Councillor Jones, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have a number of questions. So I have some that will centre around site selection and then some other questions on specific sites. So I'm quite happy to ask the ones on site selection and then come back towards the end when other people have had opportunity on the specific sites. I wonder if the officer can outline to me, with the site selection process, who was involved with the decisions that were made over which sites were included. Secondly, I seem to remember a number of 160, was it 168 sites? Can you give me a rough approximation of how many of those sites were greenbelt versus brown? And how many brown sites were refused or not included? You give me answers to that, please.
Okay, I'll do my best with some of these. So in terms of the process, we've employed a site selection methodology for establishing site options. So first of all was to establish a pool of sites, consider established for our student housing and economic plan and availability assessment, which is a technical piece of work which effectively establishes what's available for consideration through the local plan. We then did a site sift on that list to generate a further list of sites. So we used showstoppers to knock sites out in relation to if there's any particular flood risks on the site, or if the site was in use, or if there was a particular ecological issue that would prevent that site being considered further. It was then the site selection process used the distribution of development that I outlined earlier. So just let me find the slide. So for those particular areas on that slide, it's assessed sites in a sequential order. So it looked at sites in Bramfield area first, and if they weren't suitable, it looked for sites outside the green belt, and then if they weren't suitable, it then looked at sites in the green belt. to meet the development requirements as shown on that particular slide. So there was then a decision point to determine if there's a need to continue the site selection process if existing commitments to completions, which of course are backed into the process, meet the development requirements in that slide. If they didn't, that triggered an extension which looked at site appraisals for each site using technical work such as the sustainability appraisal, transport work, liability work, etc. And then there's an evaluation initial recommendations, which was at the regulation 18 stage. And then we have the public consultation and input from statutory consultees. We've then had a number of other sites submitted to us, so we've gone through that process again. And then that leads us to the final stage 7, which is the final site selection regulation 19 plan. In terms of numbers, of the allocations that we have in the plan, of the PSD5 green belt, which was on page 27, outlines the allocations that are on the green belt, which will result in green belt changes. So it's A through N, which are allocations in the green belt that the plan is looking to support.
Just intervene now and say that's also at page 46, given the awkward double pagination.
Thank you, Councillor. So that illustrates the green belt sites compared with the number of allocations that are outlined through pages 22, 23 and 24 of which is effectively the contents page in your pack. I don't have the precise numbers to hand in respect of your questions about what proportion of those are brownfield, etc. What I would say is in anticipation of the full council meeting, we will be publishing a host of evidence in respect of how we've gone around looking at sites. And through that process, we'll be able to respond to your question. If you like that in written form in the full meeting, we can provide that.
Councillor Jones, do you wish to continue or would you wish to Mr. Conlon?
Oh, no, I just want to come back on that. My question was who was involved with making the decision? Can you tell me who was involved? Was it officers solely? Was it members of cabinet? Who made that decision over whether sites were included or not?
Well, in respect of we've worked through that site selection process in an evidence-based way to come to recommendations which show before you see it's officers doing the work on it, identifying application of the plan. But that being said, it is a full council decision about the plan. So you'll see the plan, you'll see all the evidence, and it'll be a full council. It's ultimately be members' decision about the sites to go out for consultation. It won't be an officer's decision. But to get to the point we are now, we've used the site selection methodology in an evidence-based way to get to the recommendation which are before you.
Yeah, so just to confirm your answer was, sorry, I just want to absolutely nail this. Your answer to my question was essentially that cabinet members were not involved with selection of sites. Is that true or false?
There is a discussion that's held in respect of documentation that's released, but the evidence in respect of the local plan is published. You can see for yourself how decisions were made around sites. And I will refer to my previous answer in terms of ultimately the decision about this local plan, sites within it, are a full council decision.
Answer his question.
Members of the public, I will let this go, but can we please keep it to an orderly fashion? Any more further disruption and I will adjourn the meeting and will be asked to leave.
I consider orderly fashion answering the man's question. He's an elected councillor. That is what I consider orderly fashion.
And I am the chair of this meeting and I've asked you to remain silent while the officers answers the member's question. Thank you. Councillor Jones, I'm going to come back to you and let other members in if that's okay with you. Yeah, okay. Councillor Moss.
Thank you, Chair. I've got two questions, if I may. Has an organisation been found to run the proposed community centre in Nottingham, and have Support Staffordshire been contacted as previously recommended by Councillor Grocott? That's the first question.
You want to answer, how would you wish to ask your second question?
I'll ask the second question, Chair, if that's okay. Chair, in regard to the proposed housing developments in Nottingham, the following clause probably appears in all cases. It states financial contributions to improvements in the capacity of local schools and health facilities. I'd just like to ask how that statement translates to more school places and more capacity for GP appointments. Thank you.
So, okay, I'll bring in some man.
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. In terms of the community centre in Nottingham, yes, we're still proposing to get a community based group to run that, and yes, we are starting to have those discussions. Whether we've actually contacted support staff, I don't personally don't know, but I'll check with the team and I'll get back to you. But we are still very much in provision, and yes, it will be something that we are looking to get the community to run.
Councillor Lucas.
No, sorry, that's the next thing.
Oh, sorry, I do apologise, Councillor.
In terms of the question on infrastructure, as mentioned in the presentation, we've got an infrastructure delivery plan. As part of that process, we've had consultation with infrastructure bodies, including the primary integrated care board, I should say, and the county council in respect to matters such as education and health. So, sitting behind that request for contributions will be a document which will say what contributions will go towards effectively through the plan.
Councillor Burke, please.
Thank you, Chair. One question and a couple of just comments and clarification, actually. The first one is regarding the actual process. If people ask me this after Monday, I'm a bit question is, and what I mean by that is, obviously on the 24th it's going to full council, and then it's saying we've got the consultation with the Secretary of State, and that's why it's not been back to council to be ratified before going to the Secretary of State. Surely it may be changed in the consultation. It seems going to kind of rubber stamp it off before this happens. The second one of the year, of course, is about my ward, obviously, which is Chester. I see two schools, one of which I'm a governor, so I shouldn't put that one there, just St. Chad's. They've actually been put down for actually redeveloping or extending. Now, I can't tell you up to the Chester Community College. St. Chad's has not been consulted on this, so the governor's meeting last night. So we're just wondering if it's been put down here, that could happen. At what point are you going to find out the financing, actual accountability, and also designated areas? So that's one. The third one will be about the slides. Once again, I spoke to plenty of people the other day after Monday's meeting, and several slides would be available for them. They said you're not able to find them on there, so I wonder if Alan can just clarify that.
Okay, I'll let the officer do that first questions and then I'll invite to some.
If I may briefly start, and then I'll hand over to our middle technical parts. Yes, looking at the way this goes, at full council, what we're doing is saying we think that the plan that goes ahead for consultation is the plan that we wish to submit. All consultations on that plan will be bundled together and sent off to the Secretary of State along with the plan. If the council has a quick look at our introductory thing, and I appreciate it's a lot of documentation this evening, but not in the plan itself, but in our little introductory thing, you can see at 1.7, it says if representation are received during the Reg guarantee consultation stage that will materially impact upon the overall plan strategy or have a significant implication for the examination of plan, then a further report would be brought back to full council. So in other words, if there's a significant, a material or significant problem, it would come back to full council. Otherwise, it will go off to the Secretary of State, the Inspectorate, with all the representations that people have chosen to make, are bundled together. Again, as our officer has said, this is a slightly different sort of consultation process. So I think it's incumbent on all of us as members to make sure we're on top of that and make sure that the people we represent who may want to make those representations know the format in which they can make them. Again, at the very beginning of the local plan document, if you look at the section 1, right up front at the beginning, there is stuff on how to do those consultations. So it's in the document, but obviously some people need a bit of help there, and I'm hoping we can all give them that help. And I'll now pass over to
Thank you, Councillor Dare. In terms of the question around chat, we've engaged with the county council and their education team for the infrastructure delivery plan, which identify this requirement. What I would say is that this is there are a number of stages yet before the plan is adopted. We've got full council decision, we've got the consultation, and then potentially, as councillors outlined, could be going back to full council, and then the examination process itself, which will test these allocations before the plan can then be adopted. And then that site will still need planning permission beyond that. So we're at very early stages of a long-term process here. And so there will be further details to follow through that process. In respect of the slides, I think we had, Councillor might correct me, but I think we've had a discussion about that, and we think that the slides will be made available during the consultation period.
It's certainly my intention that the slides are there, and I think a member suggested that a small sort of little video talking about how to do consultations can be made, and I'll be in contact with our comms team about this tomorrow and how to put that together. One thing I'd like to stress, which Mr. Clark has spoken about, and I'd like to underline this, is that the process we are going through is about sites. And the principle of development, it is not carte blanche for anyone simply to develop upon that site. Any proposal that comes forward will still have to meet all the normal planning criteria for that site, including, of course, quite a lot of substantial policies embedded in the local plan itself. So just because an area of land is marked down for development, that doesn't mean you can build anything you like there. You still have to satisfy the planning committee, the council here, that that is the right and appropriate sort of development for that piece of land.
Councillor Wilcox, would you like to comment?
Yes, so thanks for that clarification. Just one other thing I'd like to just bring forward, Chair. I don't think it's been really to your actual attention. General public did actually put some questions forward. There was a few questions in general. Will they in this presentation or have they not been put to your attention this time?
Yes, so there has been questions that have been put in, and those that have not removed their questions, they will be invited to speak after we've finished here. Councillor Wheeler,
Thank you very much. I think one of the things that we have to remember when we're looking at this is the old adage, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. I am quite new to this committee and therefore have been doing a lot of catch up and digging. One of the things that I note, and it is quite an emotive subject to do with building houses and so on, is that if you look at section 2.3 and the whole list of evidence based, coming from a legal background, that's important to me. The whole raft of things that have not just been looked at, but chewed over, investigated, analysed, put together to come up with a plan, and they're all listed there. There's a lot of them, including things like transport, including things like green belt assessment. Only when you had a look at all the evidence can you come to a decision whether and park the emotion as to whether it is right for this borough or wrong for this borough? So that's my first point. My second point is it's a plan. It's not cast in stone yet. Because it's a plan, it develops, and it develops through consultation, through input from interested parties. And the final point I'd like to make is one that thankfully Councillor Andy Beer made, in that, yes, this is the plan, and those are all the sites that we think would be suitable and are designated as suitable. But anyone who wants to put one brick on top of another and create a structure will still have to go through the planning process, whereby it can be a yay or a nay, depending on what's intended. And the one thing you can be assured of is everything, there are enough scrutiny committees on this borough council, more than you can shake a stick at. Everything will be scrutinised and everything will be considered and given a yes or a no. Thank you.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, I have two things. They're quite separate, so if it's possible through you, I would like to ask my one question of the permit holder and Potts present, and then to raise a separate matter where it needs to be afterwards. My question of the portfolio holder is, we've heard tonight from three members who've been exceptional in representing their local areas and have raised site allocation issues on an individual basis, an issue about infrastructure as well. Councillor Groves, I completely commend that. That is good scrutiny on the part of those members. But as has been explained, this plan is being consulted on. If it's voted on by full council, it goes to consultation, regulation 19 stage, and it will be considered, it will be tested for soundness. And I'm sure that the first words out of our panel's lips will be that every element of this is sound and extremely strong. What would you say, what would they say, Chair, is the weakest plank of this? If you had to pick one item, is it the site allocations? Is it the site allocation methodology? Is it infrastructure? Is there a weakness in the process that we've followed hitherto to get to this process? What are they most worried the Secretary of State will find as a chink in this when it comes for consideration? What's the weakest part?
That's coming. Councillor Clay.
That's a typical academic question, if I may ask. It's the sort of thing you would be asked when you were examined upon your doctoral thesis. But manifestly, we live in a fallen world and not everything is perfect. And manifestly, a local plan will involve trade-offs, because otherwise, we can all sit there and wish for perfection and we'll get nowhere at the end of the day. As you pointed out, Councillor Holland, we haven't had a local plan in this borough for a very, very long time indeed, and the dangers of that are enormous. My biggest worry, I suppose, might be with the change of government, that we are confronted with a much larger housing number than we have in this. We've listened to people at consultation, we've gone for low sustainable growth here. Hopefully, we'll be able to retain that figure. If we cannot, of course, we will have to go back and think very hard about that. But unfortunately, those are matters which are outside of our control.
Any other members wishing to speak before I invite Councillor General back? I'll just offer Councillor Holland's right to reply, and then I'll bring you in, Councillor Jones.
I apologise, it's not quite your right to reply. What's the other thing I wanted to raise? And I apologise to you, Chair, because it does impact on you. If the members of the public who have come forward with questions for item 6 on tonight's agenda, if their questions relate directly to the discussion that we're now having, the debate on this item, would you consider reordering the agenda such that we can respectfully hear their questions and the answers given before we vote on the item? Because I'm conscious that if we vote on this and then we move to public questions, those members of the public who've given some time out of their evening to be here tonight, perhaps to ask a question, might feel shortchanged because it may have a material impact on what we choose to vote.
So I was going to, before we bring it in, I was going to alter the agenda and do as you suggested, Councillor Holland.
Apologise.
Councillor Jones, there are nobody else wishing to speak, so would you like to come back?
Thank you, Chair. I have just some questions specifically on a site that borders onto my ward, which is Kiel Golf Course, now named Lyme Park, which I thoroughly approve of. I think that's a very good name for the site. The reductions in the number of houses on that site from previous iterations are very welcome. But I am quite concerned that that reduction in the number of houses on that site has come with the inclusion of another site for mixed use on the base of the university campus. And much like one of the previous councillors raised about transport, I fully understand that there's been an element of desktop modelling on the impact of these developments on the transport network. I completely understand that. But I think with these sites, we're looking at, and correct me if my maths is wrong, we're looking at sort of 550 houses on TB19, 545 houses with Kiel Road access on the new Lyme Park. That's a significant number of properties, most of which will come with 2-3 cars potentially if they are quite large properties. And that's going to put significant burden, not just on Kiel Bank, but also on the A53. I suspect the majority of those commuting from TB19 will be going A53 towards Newcastle rather than away from Newcastle. And I think in many ways, one of the issues that will be found when trying to sell this plan to the public, particularly around those sites, is that there's nothing in there to spell out what the vision is for the highway network around there. Kiel Bank is notoriously clogged up at rush hours coming out of the university and going into the university. The addition of these houses will not just add additional pressure onto Kiel Bank, but will also add additional pressure onto the flow of traffic beyond that and into Newcastle, whether that's through Milehouse or whether that's directly down via Goldfields and into the town that way. And I think for me, that is one of my major concerns around that site. It's just the sheer volume of traffic it's going to bring, not just in creating problems for those within those developments to enter and exit. And of course, there's something we can do about that when it comes to planning. But when it comes to the main highways, I would like to see more of a commitment up front to how we're going to improve the infrastructure there, because it's groaning at the moment with current traffic levels. The second part of my question on that site is the inclusion of a new primary school. Now, I understand that this will be done based again on desktop modelling, on numbers, developments, that sort of thing. But I wonder what discussions have been had with existing primary schools in the area, notably St John's in Kiel, and the 2 primary schools in Silverdale, because there's possibly an argument for expansion of those schools and whether those schools have been engaged with that process and have been able to put forward their own suggestions, perhaps for expansion within their footprint rather than the addition of a new primary school. I was a bit rambling, but there was some questions in there, and I think the cabinet members are nodding, so I think you got them. Thank you.
Councillor Freeman, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Jones. Yes, I hear the questions that you've got there, and they are very sensible questions. What I can say is that the traffic modelling that's done has been not just localised traffic modelling. There was a large model set up for the old joint local plan. So the traffic flows into the city, around the area, as well as just locally. And that our proposals are based upon that modelling. Now, to go on with that again, is this other point that I've raised and would again like to stress that when any proposal for development comes up upon one of those sites, it will then, that specific proposal will have the full planning scrutiny involved. Therefore, if we feel that when something comes forward there, it's going to cause significant highways problems, those problems can be raised at the planning stage. I'm sure that highways will be very interested in any of those particular developments anyway. So my hope is that we have in place a process to deal with what you rightly identify as a potential problem for any specific development. As regards the school, and our officers will correct me if I'm wrong, I raised exactly the same question actually. Wouldn't an extension of St John's Keel or something like that be a more appropriate way forward? My understanding is that the local education authority believe that a new school, a new establishment is the way forward. Again, I look to my officers to tell me I'm right or wrong about that. But again, we are, of course, at one level. If we have expert witnesses who say one thing, it's really quite hard to push in the opposite direction. But as I say, I look to our officers now to shoot me down in flames.
No, I think that's I think that's for that. And thank you, Councillor Jones, for your question. I think that it's a fair characterisation in terms of the question was asked with the education authority around extensions to existing schools, and the feedback that we received is, given the 900 dwellings on the Lyme Park site, that would trigger a requirement for a new primary school, and the policy asks. In terms of the transport, I think Councillor outlines eloquently the position there, but just to add that there are policy asks within site KL15 and the Lyme Park site in relation to improvements to enhancement of bus services and active travel corridors, etc. Alongside, as I mentioned previously, potential link road between Whitmore Road through to the A525 Kill Road as well. And that's been informed by the strategic transport assessment, as we mentioned earlier, which has utilised the strategic transport model to assess the allocations and recommend mitigation measures that we've included within the plan.
So I commend right at the end there, just to add a few things. I've built a few schools in the past. There will be a primary head teacher school, primary school head teacher association that works alongside the county council. Whilst the county council is the statutory consultancy that we have to talk to, that is not to say that the head teachers of those two schools cannot lobby the statutory county council education team for what it's the best option, if that is an extension or a new school. Because a new school will have a direct impact on the intake of the existing schools, and head teachers tend to be a bit worried about that. So whilst we have consulted with the right people, because we have to consult with the education authority, and if a development is moving forward, the head teachers will then be involved in that discussion. So it may well change. And as Alan said at the start, this is a plan for earmarking development. If that changes because of circumstances, that will then change the plan. But it is probably down to the head teachers themselves in the schools to have that discussion rather than ourselves.
Councillor Jones, you have a follow-up?
No, I don't.
Councillor Wheeler.
Could I just ask the portfolio report, please? Am I right in understanding it's better to have this plan with a certain amount of housing that we have control over, rather than just waiting to have it in a number inflicted upon us?
Well, the councillor asks an awkward question in the sense that obviously if the national government imposes a target upon the council, national government is stronger than local government. There are a hierarchy of things. So we will be stuck with that. I hope very much that won't happen. I think what the councillor is alluding to is something that I know Councillor Holland will have said before, is that we have laboured now for very many years with the notion of having sufficient housing. And if a developer can demonstrate that we don't have sufficient housing as defined by the law, not by ourselves, then it's pretty much open season for development. In other words, what the local plan does is it allows us to take control of where we think development should happen in this borough, and it gives us a very strong tool to ward off predatory developments in this borough. And that's something we haven't had for a long time, and therefore that's one of the reasons I would very strongly commend the adoption of the plan.
So what it does is stop slick contractors, builder companies coming in and building hundreds and hundreds of houses wherever there's a gap.
Well, potentially, Councillor, that's correct, although there's always a Secretary of State who has got the trump card. So, you know, we cannot protect ourselves against national government in that regard. However, if national government remains where it is and we have a local plan, it certainly makes it extremely more difficult for predatory development to take place, because we've now said these are the areas we think are appropriate to allocate development in our borough. And you're going to have to prove very, very, very hard why you should be developing elsewhere. So in that respect, this is a strong safeguard that we have not had for a long time.
Yeah, come back to them. So what you're saying is it's better that we have the control, because otherwise it can be much worse.
Yes, I'm a perennial pessimist, Councillor, so I'm not going to say things are wonderful, but things will be better, yes.
Sounds like a good son.
Any other members wishing to speak? Councillor Roadhouse.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just coming back to what Councillor Jones just said there. Outside of my ward, there's actually, but obviously on the Kitchener Town Council, there is a lot of worry, I should say, about the infrastructure. So just more for comments and noting more than anything else. Obviously between Tor and Med Street, between them Tor Road basically, which is basically gridlocked at the best of times, correctly bank. I'm also seeing it in Audley myself as well. Obviously I'm also with the Director of CIC, so just for comments there. The other thing I'd like to put up there is, this is just but Alan, you might know this one. What dates we're thinking for these consultations? Because last time I had a few residents that said it was like 5 to 6 days before you haven't got the actual consultation time. So what I'm saying is the actual pop-up shows, can we make sure they don't fairly quickly? So obviously people have got the maximum amount of consultation time to go forward and actually plan forward. Thank you.
Alan, would you like to answer the amendment?
Yeah, in terms of the infrastructure, yes, that we know that, and the comments around the infrastructure logic plan would refer to. And in terms of the consultation, we're on with booking venues at the moment. But obviously, we subject to approval later in the month for the council. We'll certainly look to advertise those events as soon as we can.
And yes, Councillor, I mean, I think the thrust of your question was the timing of them within the consultation period. I hear what you say, and we will take cognizance of that to make sure that they're done in a timely fashion.
If there are no further questions of Councillor Rees.
Just a quick one, just on the consultation events. Would it be worth considering that those events kind of short presentations for the public rather than coming in? I know there's officers there, but would that be kind of better, a short presentation, just a kind of walkthrough of the local plan, what it kind of means, key points?
That's an interesting question, Councillor. My worry about that is the timing. So if we have a walk-in event, someone can come in, and I would hope that what we would have are boards which would take people through the stages of consultation, and that we would have perhaps a model format for how to do that. What would concern me, say, is that, you know, if there's a presentation at 6 o'clock and somebody can't get there till 7, they're going to feel badly done by in that regard. So I hear what you say about informing people, but I would like to think that we have a neutral ground, so to speak, for the entire 2 or 2.5 hours, rather than a special bit that some people could go to, and then a little bit later where people couldn't go to. But we're working on the consultation now. We're learning from our previous consultations, so we'll try to make it as slick and as effective as we can.
Members, if there are no further questions or comments, what I propose to do is I will put pause to item number 4 for the moment, and I will swiftly move on to item 6, which is public question time. Now, we've received 3 questions. I don't know if they're from individuals or the same person, but so yeah, the questions will be put on the screen and read. And Alan will read the questions.
Okay, would you like me to read the question first or?
No, just straight answer.
Just the answer, okay, so the council intends to publish evidence in relation to the regulation management local plan by the full council meeting on the 24th of July. Even then, some of the evidence in relation to local plan can't be finalised until after the local plan is agreed with the council. The full evidence base will be published alongside the local plan before the consultation period starts to allow full engagement with the plan, its policies, proposals and evidence. Moving on to question 2. Recent changes outlined in my early presentation have been proposed to the wording of each site agency to provide further clarification on the extent, nature, and employment land floor space provided on the site. In addition to employment land, the site would provide for lorry park and ancillary uses. Land would also be taken up for roads, other supporting infrastructure, and landscaping requirements, etc. Council's approach to site agency is informed by its site selection process, strategic employment land assessment, greenbelt, and other relevant evidence. Question 3. The council recognises that section 211 notice to undertake works to a non-TPO protected tree in the conservation area is not the same as an application. Any such references in the draft local plan will be amended accordingly.
Thank you, Alan. I hope those questions that have been submitted have been answered respectfully. So we'll move back from Councillor Bercott. You like to come in?
Yes, so Chair, could I just ask if Alan wouldn't mind actually just emailing that back to the person actually the actual answers back to the actual person in question who's done it, just for confirmation. Thank you very much.
So again, we'll move back now to item 4, and we will, if there's no further response or do members have any questions to ask regarding the questions that we've just seen, Councillor Holland.
No, I would have asked the same as Councillor Grocart asked about making sure that the person who asked those questions has received a proper answer in addition to the committee tonight. I'm very happy to move the recommendation on item 4 as printed.
Okay, so can this report be approved as per the recommendations, or is a vote required?
I think the vote is required.
Yes, I mean, we should probably say.
Hey.
Can budget?
No, you're not allowed to speak.
I thought you were going after public if you wanted to ask.
We have to ask permission, and nobody's asked for that permission, so.
Well, can you speak up so we can hear properly then?
We're talking into the mics. I don't know what's actually up with them. They're not as loud as they normally are for some reason.
Because you're not speaking into one go.
Okay, all those who approve.
This is the recommendation to send it to full council.
Yes, that's correct. All those who approve the recommendation, of course, raise your hands, please. All those against? Okay, that's no abstentions, so it is approved that this will go to full council. Thank you. Right, so move back to item on the agenda now, is item 5, which is the work programme. Upcoming planned items is the next economy in place scrutiny, which will be held on the 12th of September. Which includes the HS2 updates, local plan updates, town deal and future high street performance. Moving on, it's a special meeting with the 853 bus gates. Potentially, yeah, that's got to be discussed, finalised with the health and wellbeing scrutiny committee. But it's proposed to accelerate. I will just also make some other members of the public, just leave.
Share on that apologies, I'll probably be away. Right back. I'll get us to the ground on the jet.
The slight answer. Yeah.
Okay, so back to the work programme. What is pending is a bid update, that's to be presented by the bid manager. Potentially again, and planning enforcement and performance to be re-added to the work programme around December 2024. Members have anything further to add? No? Okay then. So, item 7 then is urgent business. I've not been made aware of any urgent business this evening. So on that account, the next meeting, as I've just said, will be the 12th of September. Have yourselves a very good evening. Thanks for
Because the thing is, when it comes to yes, I know.